What if I told you that the real story of the Modi-Putin summit wasn't in the hugs, the gifts, or the televised optics, but in a set of agreements that could quietly reorder India's energy security, its tech future, and its place in a polarized world? Would you agree? Subscribe, tap the bell icon, and tell us in the comments, did India make the right move, deepening ties with Moscow at this moment? Clearly, what happened in Delhi was not just another bilateral meeting. It was India sending a message. Not softly, not indirectly, unmistakably. Through the hard architecture of contracts and long-term commitments. Now, while the headlines were dominated by Modi gifting Putin a sacred Gita and the visuals of the two leaders embracing on the airport tarmac, the real action unfolded behind closed doors, where both sides stitched together some of the most consequential deals in years. Now, have there been deals in the past which have created more of a splash? For sure. Have there been agreements with bigger billions attached? Definitely. But what about impact? Real long-term change that is not restricted just to India and Russia. Let's look at what happened in Delhi and why it's big. I'll begin with the reshaping of India's energy lifeline. Russia has now pledged uninterrupted fuel shipments, oil, gas, coal, at a scale designed to insulate India from global shockwaves. Is this a direct challenge to Trump? Hear it from Putin himself.
Успешно развивается партнерство в энергетике. Россия является надежным поставщиком энергоресурсов и всего, что необходимо для развития энергетики. Мы готовы и далее обеспечивать бесперебойную поставку топлива для быстро растущей индийской экономики.
And beyond that, Putin and Modi spoke of a sweeping expansion of nuclear cooperation, support for India's biggest nuclear project, collaboration on small modular reactors, and even floating nuclear plants. So beyond the optics, there's much more than symbolic gestures. This is India building energy insurance. And very important, doing this at a time when Western markets are tightening and the Middle East supply lines are unpredictable. The most telling detail? Much of this fuel will be paid for in rupees. So India is diversifying not just what it buys, but how it buys. On trade, the ambition is equally bold. India and Russia started by reviewing numbers. Modi and Putin ended by launching a roadmap to double bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030. And this is what matters. They broadened the relationship far beyond oil. They signed agreements on fertilizers, shipping routes, food safety, health, logistics, and critical minerals. A Russian-backed urea plant for Indian needs, a stronger Chennai-Vladivostok corridor, and the near-total shift to ruby-ruble settlements. This is a real structural challenge to dollar dominance in the bilateral relationship. Quietly, methodically, India and Russia have built one of the world's most insulation-friendly trade ecosystems. But perhaps the most underestimated breakthrough came from the realm of space and high technology. Russia has agreed to fully transfer the RD-191M semi-cryogenic rocket engine technology to ISRO, one of the most sensitive propulsion systems in the world. For India, this is a generational leap. It enables more powerful launchers, deeper space missions, and a stronger foothold in the global commercial launch market. Add cooperation on Gaganyaan, navigation systems, AI, aviation, and it becomes clear that the relationship is moving swiftly to the next level, to forward-looking tech modernization. What about the defense track? India and Russia signaled a shift from buyer-seller dynamics to co-development and co-production on Indian soil. Putin endorsed Make in India for fighter jets, missiles and advanced platforms. Yes, discussions about S-400s and Su-57s were expected, but the change in tone is pretty significant. India will keep buying what it needs from Russia while simultaneously indigenizing critical components and manufacturing. It's continuity without dependency and autonomy without rupture. Of course, there were softer deliverables. India's 30-day e-visas for Russian tourists, Russia training Indian seafarers for Arctic routes, the launch of a Russian TV station in India. These are useful, friendly gestures, increased people-to-people contact that lies at the heart of the relationship, but not the strategic meat of the visit. Now, the key test of Putin's visit to India is the global reaction. Washington is already uneasy. The US raised tariffs on Indian goods over Russian oil imports. Now, the US will read these fresh agreements as India quietly but firmly resisting American pressure. In a world where Washington wants allies to isolate Moscow, New Delhi's just expanded energy, tech and defense links instead. Can India deal with a fresh round of retaliation from the White House? Now, in Delhi, Indian officials are understandably cautious. Washington sees India asserting autonomy. India sees Washington misunderstanding how multipolar the world has become. And this is very interesting. China is playing a very different game. Beijing is far more relaxed watching Putin and Modi hug in New Delhi. Chinese media framed the summit as normal diplomacy, even amplifying Putin's view that the US has no monopoly on buying Russian fuel. And this is because for China, an India that defies US pressure is useful. Not because Beijing wants India stronger, but because it wants American leverage weaker. A Russia that can balance both China and India suits Beijing's long-term strategic calculus. Europe, meanwhile, is quietly unhappy. Okay, maybe not that quietly. The days before Putin's arrival saw a number of interviews and opinion pieces where Western ambassadors and even ministers questioned India's foreign policy strategy. They questioned how India could possibly deepen its relationship with Putin the invader. But in the months since the Gaza war, Europe's hold on the high moral ground has slipped. Brussels has invested enormous political capital in negotiating an EU-India FTA. Now critics in Europe warn that hosting Putin in India during the war in Ukraine could slow or complicate those talks. In real terms, though, the EU's options are limited. Publicly, the EU will be diplomatic. Privately, unease is growing. And then there's India's own strategic posture. The one message this summit shouted out loudly: New Delhi will not be cornered into any camp. Not Washington's, not Moscow's, not Beijing's. India will buy oil where it wants, sign nuclear agreements where they make sense, accept engine transfers on merit, and negotiate trade on sovereign terms. It will work with the US on the Indo-Pacific, it will work with Russia on defense and space, it will talk to Europe about market access. But the question I'm asking is this: will this multi-alignment strategy give India more leverage or more friction? By deepening ties with Russia at a moment of global polarization, India gains energy stability, technology boosts, and defense autonomy. But it also invites scrutiny from Washington, skepticism from Brussels, and strategic curiosity from Beijing. It is a high-reward, high-risk path, yet it is the only path India finds acceptable. So yes, the Modi-Putin summit had hugs and gifts and warm optics, but the real outcomes, and I'm going to highlight these again because don't make the mistake of dismissing them lightly, the real outcomes of guaranteed Russian energy, rupee-based trade expansion, rocket engine transfers, defense co-production, those are the pillars of something much larger. And that is India's declaration that it will shape its future without fear of geopolitical disapproval. Will India under Modi be able to hold up these pillars? Or will a tornado called Trump get in the way? I want to hear your point of view. Is India's multi-alignment working, or is it going to create new pressure points? Tell me in the comments, and if you're following these shifts as closely as we are, Make sure you subscribe because the world order is changing fast. India has chosen its path. Can it walk it through to the end? And which way is the rest of the world headed? Has India shown the way to the end of a US-led world order?